Hello, everyone. Welcome to Jameel Art Center. My name is Lucas Morin. I'm a senior curator here at Art Jameel, and I'm really happy to welcome you today to celebrate the opening of Bady Dalloul's solo exhibition called Self-Portrait with a Cat I Don't Have, which is also the title of this beautiful work featuring a cat that you see on the screen. And the show is already open. It's on the second floor of Jameel Art Center in what we usually call our smaller space. But Bady's works are so tiny and meticulous that it ends up being a very dense show that requires a lot of time and attention to go through. So please do keep that in mind when you go up. It really deserves to be experienced with time and patience. So to introduce Bady's practice and the exhibition that you're going to see today, if you haven't seen it yet, we have the pleasure of welcoming three guests who agreed to talk about different aspects of Bady's work. And all of you have collaborated to an extent with Bady in different places at different stages of Bady's career as well, and you each have also very different practices. Mizuho, you're a curator. Ala, you are many things, including artist, curator, and have worked with Bady in different capacities as well. And Ahmad, you are a publisher first and foremost, and you've also engaged with Bady through the angle of bookmaking, which is going to be interesting to discuss. Before we start, just one word about the exhibition. This is actually the second part of a we don't call it a touring show, but let's say a traveling exhibition that you started with a first solo at the Morin Museum in Tokyo in Japan, where a lot of the works that you're going to see today were produced, and it then opens today at the Jameel with a lot of new works and kind of a new framework, and it's gonna travel again next year in 2026 to Lisbon to the Gulbenkian Modern Art Center, where again it's gonna take a new context and a new meaning. And I'm mentioning the fact that this show keeps transforming at each step because I think it's very important to consider your practice and the way you respond to the context where you create work and where you exhibit. For the structure of this talk that we're going to have now, each of our guest speakers will discuss either one work or one group of works that they chose and that was particularly meaningful to them. All works that you're going to be able to see in the show. And we're going to start with Ala Younis. So I'm going to read your bio. Ala, you are an artist engaged in curatorial film and publishing projects. Your projects look into how the archive plays on predilections and how its mishaps manipulate the imagination. Among many, many other things, you co-founded Kaifata, an independent publishing initiative, and you organized several group exhibitions on publishing, on which occasion you have published and exhibited Bady's work. Maybe you're going to talk about that a little. And most recently, you co-curated Maknana, an archaeology of new media art in the Arab world at Diriyah Art Futures and the Singapore Biennale in 2022. Again, among many, many other things on your extensive bio. So I'm going to give the floor to you. Thank you so much for joining us, especially since you're installing your solo exhibition that opens in 3 days at the NYU Abu Dhabi Gallery. So another opening not to miss. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you very much for having me. Congratulations on this amazing and beautiful show. I would never say no to an invitation from Bady, but also from you, Lucas, and also our friends here at Art Jameel. Yes, we've worked together before, and I've seen how together with Bady before, and I've seen how you've changed your relationship with your art. With this show, between the time when we were organizing our exhibition on publishing or on artists when they are making books. And one would think that they know the work of the artist, so they're fans of. I'm a fan of your work, but also friends with, but also have shown But really, it's I like these opportunities when we get to read, to look for more information and really become more acquainted with the intentions of the artist. And I tried as much as I tried to find some information, and I could always, like, I'm hitting a wall, so I don't find enough information or the information I'm looking for. So first, I want to read something that I wrote. Maybe it's like a fake poem, okay, for your work. I'm referring to the small works this one, Negotiation of who I am and who I could be. So small that enlarged or zoomed in images do not give away larger views, but shows us the grains. And speaking of enlarged, I feel my voice is a little bit strange in the mic. Is it, do you hear me well? Yeah? I feel a lot of echo. So small that enlarged or zoomed in images do not give away larger views, but shows us the grains. Small, throbbing, anxious, porous. We are small indeed. Traders know how to inscribe value to someone else's smallness, or to our labor, to what we feel, or to the entanglements in our heads, making connections between things we see, we belong to, we do not belong to, we have to, fading images on illuminating screens. And here I want you to look at these works. They're packaged, contained, not before they are inscribed out there in the open. So you draw them outside and then you bring them in the box.
Actually I drew them and after I boxed them. Can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you all for being here, by the way.
They're pasted inside the paper box. Matches boxes. Matches removed so that they do not set the work on fire. The fire is already within and in the world. So, Bady, you changed the title of this work, which used to be Country Without a Door and Windows, to Matchboxes in 2024. Although this is a work that you have started in 2016, and you've produced more than 700 drawings of everyday images, screenshots of the mostly news that we see, troubling news most of the time, a lot of fighters, a lot of insurgents, medical situations, but also care and tender and people carrying things, where you eat, where you sleep, what do you read. Why did you change the title?
Thank you for this question. Thank you all for being here today. It means a lot to me. I changed the title because at the beginning when I was starting to draw in 2016, the war in Syria was at its peak, and the images of this place was everywhere. I was in Paris at the time, and you could see these images on every news kiosk, in every news report, in conversations, even among people who are not Syrian, and there was nowhere to escape. So starting to draw these matchboxes for me was a way to digest this flux of information, this flux of images that were so violent, so intense, all at once. Over the years, the nature of the conflict evolved, and I think so do I. Also, the place where I was working from changed as I migrated from places to other places. And I think it was also my way to deal with these images. I think I think also grew more confidence to draw things that were part of my daily life over the years. And so 2 years ago, I decided to, let's say, close the chapter of these matchboxes that were dealing specifically with what was happening in Syria, and give more spaces to what was going on in general in Syria, but also elsewhere, as it was mattering as much also over the years.
Very nice. Hence, but also your new series, they will stop just before December 8th, and we will see the moments that came just before. These matchboxes, or before when they were a country without a door or windows, are displayed here like screenshots, thumbnails that remind us of our feelings in moments of fear, of uncertainty or disgust sometimes, or despair, to screenshots not just stored in our phones but imprinted in our brain. How much time an image of a severed limb stays floating when we close our eyes? There's a lot of this in your works. Our ability to look at what we have disposed, what we have stored, put aside, to say in small drawings what stays in our eyes when they are closed. Limbs severed, not just now, perhaps sometimes in the 80s or in the 20s, like what your earlier works refer to. Perhaps when the world was 18, or perhaps in 2016. I see them now. The war within your work in the exhibition upstairs, it says a lot. It says about all these battles that are inside us and in greater Syria and in our kings. I was also amazed when I saw your works in Badland and Jadland, who would give a wrong indication that probably the title is just about a land that is bad, but it's a land that belongs to Bady, and Jadland to Jad, your brother. And I was amazed to imagine how would you call a land after someone's name but still not have a negative name. But what was amazing is also to see, I was amazed to see the kings, being in Jordan, the kings that are normally Jordanian kings and their cousins who are normally Iraqi kings were also at some point Syrian kings. And so if we go back in time in our lineages together, we meet in this moment when it was greater Syria or when the borders were in there, right? But speaking of border, but also we meet in the figure of Ziad Dalloul, artist Ziad Dalloul, who's your father and my teacher. I was trained as an architect, and the first time I was trained in art was under Ziad Dalloul at Darat al-Funun. So I consider him as a mentor, of course. And Ziad's work is about having interior images in outdoor spaces. So you walk into a forest and you find your room. The same way we will come up onto this second floor and we will find your apartment in Dubai, only because it is not where your apartment is normally. And Ziad is very intimidating when he is in the audience, I was thinking, because he's so contemplative, knowledgeable, spiritual. He knows so much. He can debunk anything we say. But when I was learning how to create some paintings under him, I was creating these big boxes, and he told me, look at the fringes, at the borders, how we can make something on the border that makes an interesting relationship between a solid color onto a solid background. And then he drew these little lines to show me. And then Rafa al-Nasiri, another artist, walked in and he said, you're as if you're teaching someone. some of your art. So these etchings or paintings that I've learned like much earlier in time, in the same household, perhaps in the same this care that you were given also as a person. You told me you will not speak about that, but I can do that. I thought it's worth to mention this. I wanted to just mention that there is something in this, something really very, very generative and very rich in these fringes, in the borders. And if I am to ask you to give us three, to give us the names or the titles of three of your matchboxes, new ones. Give us 3 words.
It's thank you for this question. It's a very difficult one as they're meant, I think, to just understand an image that is meant to be consumed. You know, as you said, some of them are coming from the news, some of them are from imagination, and you know, you see them. I see them, I draw them, and then this is it. It has its importance within a group, but to give it a name would make it stand out from the others, whereas they're all together somehow.
That's true. They are also in constellations. So you told us about these insurgents that are in Syria, and they are filming themselves, like sometimes having fun, sometimes being blessed before they are sent to fight, and sometimes we see their victims in the hospital rooms. So how does this grouping come together?
I think I consider myself as someone who is seeing these images, as I think most of us here in this room, through a screen, and it is like how sometimes the brain can work to make sense between one image that is seeing this, let's say, this violent scene, and this other image that is next to it with someone who's speaking an accent that is familiar to some of us, at least in Arabic, and then able to do awful things after that. So it is this relationship, this weird relationship between meaning, shape, color, that I try to translate visually into these matchboxes.
So it's about negotiation. Again, we go back to the point, to my starting point. When you are working with your brother to build a land or a homeland or a version of it on paper, through games, through writing points, or analyzing or faking the news, right? There's some fake also images in your matchboxes. Some like images or characters that you enlarge on purpose to have us, in fact, to have you think about it, but then to have us be curious to ask you, who is this guy? I will invite you all to spend more time with these like matchboxes, because the show is very nice and very colorful. It will attract you to other places. But there's so much fire, I feel, that is there in these matchboxes. Are they Japanese matchboxes?
I use the matchboxes every time with that are available where I am. So these are matchboxes from Dubai.
Oh yeah.
That as I made them during my stay here. I've been living in Dubai since 3 years now, and yes. So you have also in the last series scenes that are relatable to my daily life here, as much as scenes from my time in Japan. It's a mix and match.
And just to have that information available for writers when they want to write this again in the future, why did you decide to make them in matchboxes?
Thank you. It was I wanted to find a way to frame them in a way that was not a frame. Okay, I will say I'm an artist saying such statements, but what I mean is I wanted a frame that was fragile. something that could not look as rich or wealthy, but something that would be relatable also to daily life. And I think, I mean, most of us have lighters now, but a matchbox is always of use, and it's an object that you keep physical as well in your pocket.
Thank you very much. I think, yes, you've managed to put a lot of value inside these like little matchboxes. But of course, whatever that the frame was, I mean, the drawings are what is there for us to engage with, for us to take into the future, right? As an alternative archive of the times and these confusions we live in our time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alak. We're gonna go straight to the second presentation by Ahmad Makia, who is a geographer, a publisher, and a bookmaker. You're also head of publications at Sharjah Art Foundation, and you founded Hyper House, that is an independent publishing studio. We invited you because Bady has a very extensive practice of making books, but very surprisingly, the works that you chose, at least surprisingly to me, the works that you chose are not books at all. So I'm excited. I'm excited to hear you. I'm gonna move to the horses first. Yes.
Yeah, we can move to horses. I'll talk about both of them simultaneously, but first off, thank you, Bady, Lucas, the Art Jameel team, and to everyone here for being with us today. And I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to engage with Bady's work. I've mostly spoken with him in a very interpersonal and informal manner. So I'm happy to, and we mostly spoke about the representation of, or say impersonation of Arabs in Japanese culture specifically, which is what I'm going to be talking about today. And I'm specifically going to be extrapolating and thinking about how impersonation, drag, character possession features regularly in Bady's work. And really, I think it's also to kind of look at the larger idea of Arab drag. And this isn't something that, we could, I mean, generally in the canon or scholarly work, Arab drag is very much understood as something that Europeans sort of projected and performed, say from the 1700s, 1800s onwards, about the region. But I think there is something a little bit more nuanced about it. And when we think about how it's also, again, performed, say, by East Asian or Japanese imperial culture, but also about how Arabness is also impersonated and performed by so-called Arabs themselves, which I will be kind of talking about today, also specifically looking at the mask of Gamal Abdel Nasser. And I think the idea I'd like to explore is, I mean, there's a very famous saying by RuPaul, who has said that we are mostly born naked and everything else is in drag. And I think what this sentiment really illustrates or means is that, we as humans are necessarily our ideological subjects, that even things we might perceive to be indigenous to us are actually not natural, but somehow fabricated and manipulated and sort of like told over time and sort of changed over time and mutate. So to narrate this point, I would like to really kind of look at this work, which is how the various strains and substrains of Arab horses are related to each other. And in the description, you'll read that it kind of mentions that this artwork is kind of made in the phantom or the ghost of T.E. Lawrence, or Lawrence of Arabia. And I mean, T. Lawrence is known for many different things, but a way to summarize it is that he was a diplomat, a scholar, someone with a deep knowledge about the Arab region, and was, quite a field worker. He was also a confidant to many Arab rulers. But I think what is very much known about him is that he was someone who migrated to the region and somehow went native, so dressed in Arab garb and so on. And it's also known that he had quite a few intimate affairs with Arabs as well. And in the description about this, it says that this work, Bady Dalloul is fascinated by disguised foreigners and self-proclaimed experts. And so this particular work kind of looks at a German scholar called Karl Raswan, who published a book about breeding Arabian horses. And the book was called Black Tents of Arabia, which is somehow reproduced here with drawings from Bady himself. And to note that what's fascinating about this is that Karl himself is a German scholar who converted his name to Raswan, and I think what is quite interesting here is that is here it sort of illustrates the sort of like scholarly work about converting or transitioning into this Arab that we see kind of exemplified by the example of Raswan. And if you are to also look at historically as well, a lot of the say the intellectual trends of European Enlightenment had a huge amount of where it was looking east, and I think most of it now is sort of critiqued as a way to fetishize or as a way to sort of like decorate, or kind of looking at it and almost as mockery. But really, I think this attempt of converting or going native or transitioning into this other sort of Arab archetype it was definitely orientalizing and fetishizing, but there is this idea that impersonating the other was also a way of breaking away from your own sense of institutionalization, from your own sort of enclosed habitat, from your own conditioning. So, a lot of what happened, I would say, really as part of the genesis of the European Enlightenment, is that there was kind of an attraction to sort of look towards other cultures, not only for mockery, but as a way to perceive oneself better from like looking towards through others' eyes. And these kinds of, let's say, methodologies really also helped kind of expand, I would say, all the things we talk about today in terms of universality, humanity. This idea of kind of, or even equality, was really kind of through this sort of work of masquerade and of somehow pretending to be the other. And I think what is very interesting about these examples of T. Lawrence or even Karl Raswan is that it shows that even the entire region might be, kind of thinking about like the building of modern secular society, very much brings the region as a central part of it rather than being a periphery. And then here I think it's also interesting to extend that even beyond, say, T.E. Lawrence or people such as Karl, is that if you fast forward 20, 30 years later, you had figures such as Malcolm X also coming to this region, going and meeting figures like Gamal Abdel Nasser, or meeting King Faisal of Saudi Arabia, and then converting into Islam. And then that also very much shifted his politics between what he saw as U.S. society as divided between blacks and whites. And with this conversion to the region, his philosophy changed in towards looking at the sort of more middle hybrid ground of who we are as people. And this also shows that the region, again, kind of very, very much factored in the larger sort of black civil rights movement of the U.S. And I think maybe to sort of like move on here to the next point, which is really with the mask, and what I think is very, very powerful about it is that it's somehow also, I mean, this kind of bringing down to how do Arabs impersonate Arabness? And I think this mask, I feel like, speaks very explicitly to that because it somehow materializes this archetype rather than sort of like personifying it. And what it does is that it represents, although I think a lot of the politics that are espoused by Nasserist or Arabism are kind of, localized or embodied by this particular figure. But what it actually is that it's somehow like a surface or like a kind of costume or mask that you put on. Because, the dawn, and also what Nasser came to symbolize, because I think that the dawn of the modern Arab, of the 20th century Arab, particularly was about fabricating and sort of shifting this idea of the region or the subjects of the regions who had for 1300 years or so belonged to a much broader Islamic empire. And so they were mostly primarily identified themselves as Muslim subjects. And then what you had is that there was a shift now where suddenly you no longer needed to identify with this broader sort of universal religion, but you kind of came to embody this Arab secular homeland. And so I think the modern Arab archetype, it was really also about somehow restructuring the region from becoming Muslim towards becoming more Arab. And even in the foundation of, I think, this sort of new modern Arab society is that the thinkers and the founders behind the movement very much understood or sort of proposed this idea that, and this is by Sata al-Husri, who, coined the term of autogeneticism, which was that you didn't necessarily need an ethnicity or your genetics as a way to identify with the region, but it was more about you speaking a language and somehow having an affinity. So you kind of had... So it wasn't, your racial lines didn't necessarily prove which sort of homeland you belong to, and I think this idea is that there was like a new sort of like broader Arab public that was being really envisaged by figures like Nasser, which was sort of this homeland, and it was also about kind of foregrounding this cross-sectional society, which also included women's participation, which also included peasants, farmers, people that might have been very much excluded and somehow outside the domain of, the nobility of Islamic culture, which had sort of, been progressing for the last 1300 years. These Arabs were also now adopting and speaking a new language, which is Fusha, which we now mostly speak. And it was really about sort of like adopting this ideology and mask. I think I will leave it there. Yeah.
Thank you, Ahmad. It's very insightful, actually. When I started working on this mask, actually, it's a commission that I did. It's the only commission that I ever did, in fact, to an acquaintance, Miss Mitsue Nakamura, who's a new mask maker in Japan. I convinced her to imagine inserting a character in the traditional theater of Nu that would not be Japanese. At the time, I was living in Japan, and I was seeing depictions of supposedly Arab, supposedly Muslim sometimes, in media, in printed matters, and in a similar way but different way, I found the same unease, but also the same humor sometimes, seeing how they, like, I was supposedly depicted, or in this context. When I think about Hollywood films I grew up with, one can easily think about these characters that are presumably also coming from the same region, and that are very different from actually my friends, my family, people I love, also coming from this area. And this weird idea had an impact on me, on my upbringing somehow, when I grew up in Paris, of Syrian heritage. How can they be so different? how can their depiction in films be so different from what I know at home, which is absolutely not the case. And I think, migrating to Japan and seeing the same stereotypes being portrayed there in a different way introduced the conversation that we will be having with Mizuho now.
Thank you so much, Bady, for this perfect transition. But Ahmad, I want to thank you and congratulate you. I think you're the first speaker to quote RuPaul at Jameel Art Center. So thank you for this. Mizuho, we're going to go back to you now. You are an independent researcher, curator, and writer. You are from Japan, but you're visiting us from much closer, from Riyadh, as you are currently a resident at Diriyah Art Futures. You dedicate your practice to amplifying socially underrepresented and marginalized voices for cultural decolonization, particularly against, I'm going to quote you here, the mobilizing agency of mass media. You've worked at curatorial departments of MoMA PS1, the Abu Dhabi project of the Solomon Art Guggenheim Museum, and the Mori Art Museum in Tokyo, where I believe is when you met Bady as he was living in Tokyo and working towards his solo exhibition there. And you are currently editorial coordinator at AWARE, Archives of Women Artists Research and Exhibitions in Paris, archiving and promoting the work of female and non-binary artists engaging with new media. That's a great bio. And the floor is yours. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much for Lucas for such a long introduction. And then, yes, it's such a pleasure to be on the same stage as you, Bady. When we met, who would have imagined that we'll be here years later together, right? Yeah, and also thank you so much for everyone coming tonight. And I'm so happy to be able to celebrate your achievement with you guys. Yes, so here I am going to focus on 3 artworks that Bady made, not in Tokyo, but I mean, not necessarily in Tokyo, but like about Japan. The first work is Ahmad the Japanese. That's the video work that Bady made in 2021 while you are at the residency in Villa Kujoyama. That's one of the prestigious French art residencies. Then one of them is in Japan. And then, yeah, it all started there. And this video is 45 minutes. It's a little bit long, but when you start seeing it, doesn't feel like so long, which is great. And then the title, Ahmad the Japanese, shows the main character person is Ahmad al-Yabani, so Ahmad the Japanese. And then this name is also coming from the Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish. Then his poem uses this character, Ahmad al-Zarta. Yeah. And then this video focuses on the immigration experience, someone from the Arab world to Tokyo, to Japan, and then this cultural shocks, exploration to the new life, also struggles, lots of struggles, language barriers, mannerism as well. And then that's somewhat what you experienced, I guess, when you came to Tokyo or to Japan. But you somehow managed your way.
Yeah, thank you. It seems, in fact, I mean, when I think about it, I was born in Paris. I grew up in Paris. Spent all my life there until I had the chance to visit Japan once, and I imagined that I needed to spend time there. So I applied for a visa, as it should be, and got my residency card there, and did, in fact, my migration. I'm aware that I'm fortunate to have made this migration in a comfortable way, but nonetheless, as a freelance visual artist who had to start from scratch in this new place where I didn't know the language, where the culture was very far from mine, but where I learned a lot. And this film, Ahmad, the Japanese, translate part of this experience. The person I have met, the friends I have made, and I tried to imagine a film where this Ahmad, an archetypical character taken from this poem of Mahmoud Darwish, would continue its way from Ahmad al-Yabani, Ahmad al-Za'tar, that maybe some of you have heard about, is still struggling, still have nowhere to go, still have no future somehow, but in a different way. And what if I imagined his trajectory coming to Japan, a place that is not the West, but it is very westernized nonetheless. And this was the result of it.
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned, although Japan sits in the far east or the end of the Eurasia, we imported a lot of ideas from the Western perspectives, and that's how we still strongly hold Orientalism in ourselves, which we Japanese should be ashamed of. Unfortunately, it's happening still. And then that also, I guess, inspired you to make another work, the next work, the Kamen Rider Dislocation. So just as a little bit of like background information, Kamen means a mask. So that goes back to what Ahmad just earlier talked to us as well. So the character Kamen Rider is a masked superhero that we Japanese kids all watch when we were kids. It's a whole entire superhero series, started in 1971, I think. And then it goes to the TV programs, films, to the goods like Labubu, and then to the mangas, to everything. So we all dreamed of becoming the superhero and then saving the world from, quote, like enemy, but whose enemy really? And then in this work, you heard the stories from your Pakistani acquaintance and then applied the stories that he experienced while living in Tokyo and then kind of like struggling somewhat in Tokyo to the character here.
Yes, Mizuho, indeed. In fact, so in my work, sometimes it is made out of encounters. Some of the works that you'll see upstairs features friends. Some of them features lives of people that are close to me. Some are only acquaintances. Some are people I have just met sometimes for 5 minutes, but that had a great impact on me. And for the case of this work, it was based on a very casual conversation I had with a man of Pakistani heritage who was living in Tokyo for more than 20 years. And we spoke about his children, and I met them, and it was... I started imagining parallels between when I grew up in Paris and the classes at school I have been to, and what these children have, where he has been, where he has been to school, and what inner world this person have at home, and what outer world is he seeing, or are they seeing every day outside home. I think it is something that many persons who are coming from elsewhere have somehow. Different words inside and outside their mind and outside their homes as well.
Yeah, so in a way, everyone is supposed to wear a somewhat of a kamen, like mask, to fit into whichever side, whether it's inside or outside or whatever world they have at the time, to get a new persona, sort of. And then I think that also relates to the third work that I'm going to talk about, Alibaba. That's another book that he made in 2024, the most recent one among all the works I'm talking about. This is also a book, like the collage book that you collected from various newspapers and like new magazines and made on the Japanese, how can I say, the leaflet that you get when you immigrate to Japan, issued by the Japanese authorities, saying like, here is the rules and mannerism that you guys need to follow. Sort of like ways for the naturalization to the Japanese culture. And then for this one, instead of the South Asian Pakistani family, you used the model of the Arab, someone from the Arab world again.
Yes, it is for this one, for instance. It's I have combined several experiences in one, in order to convey sometimes personal stories, but in a way that would annoy that would not annoy the person I contributed with, I worked with. So it is sometimes a way I proceed with. It allows me to convey stories, share sometimes intimate experiences of person I have met, people who have migrated or who have had challenges at work or at home or sometimes with authorities, but in a neutral way. And in here, I imagined someone who is coming from an undefined Swana country, and I mixed it with the leaflet that is distributed by the Japanese immigration that advises kindly how to behave somehow. It is made in such a nice way that I had to work around it and imagine another use for it and combine it with this children book.
I think that's a really clever way to use the book. Probably you're the one of the few people who use this book in the most meaningful, efficient way. Because I don't know whether how many people then would anyway read it or just discard it, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, throughout those 3 works, I think we can say that your work is very, in an incisive and playful, humorous way, you talk about someone's personal stories to immigrate to Japan in these cases. But that does not only, how can I say, put you in a personal story only. For those who have experienced leaving home to somewhere else, we all can relate. That transcends the boundaries and the geographical boundaries of any kind. And then yes, sometimes your work is about this Pakistani acquaintance or someone you met and for just only 5 minutes. But that's about your personal story, moving from Paris to Tokyo and then also Dubai as well. And then in a way, family story as well. Your parents moving from Syria to Paris in 1980s as well. So it's also a like warm, heartfelt series of works. And then, it is, again, it transcends, it goes beyond your personal experience, your family trait, but that's what we all can relate. And then I think that's something that we need to be, how can I say, also paying attention to, and also we all can acknowledge that we unite together in the 21st century where fascism is also unfortunately rising.
Yes, indeed. I mean, in a world that is polarizing even more and more, I think pointing fingers at what we don't agree with will not solve the solution. Instead, I believe in finding ways which are visual, which are colorful, which are blending experiences sometimes, that allows room for conversation. Because at the end of the day, we are all coming from somewhere. We all have our experiences, and they're all valuable, I believe. So this is how I continue. I continue. I will try to continue this practice.
Yeah, cannot wait to see more to come then.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Before we open to questions from the audience, I just wanted to ask you to tell us about one work, an important work, because it gives its title to the exhibition, but also that I love particularly, not just because it has a beautiful cat on it, but also because I think it really ties everything together. It ties the historical, the political, the personal, and it is a self-portrait. Of course, that is maybe the most obvious part of it, but could you tell us about the story behind this image and this strange, eerie blue cat that you mentioned that you don't have? What is behind it?
Thank you, Lucas. First of all, I would like to thank the Jameel Museum team entirely, as it was bliss to work with all of you, Luca, Zain, Iman, Zahra, Yazan. I will certainly forget the names, but everyone I have worked with has really, it's been a pleasure to be able to make this exhibition today. When I think about it, exhibiting the notebooks that we did with my brother when I was children in a museum, I would have never thought about it. It would ever happen. And hopefully when you'll go upstairs, you'll see them exhibited among other works I have done on a more professional basis. To go back to your question, Luca, this work, I made it when I was living in Tokyo, in like a small apartment, and I was reading this novel by this amazing Palestinian writer, Hussein al-Barghouti. The name of this novel is The Blue Light. I read the French translated version, and its story, one of migration, really resonated in me. It was a man who has migrated to the west coast of the United States in a small city and walks at night and see a city where he remembers fragments of his childhood, fragments from his family life, and in the same time living the present moment. It resonated so much in me that I did this work. On the cover of this book, coincidentally, there was a painting by Abdelhadi El-Ghazar, which was a portrait, not a self-portrait, of a person that I ignored the name at the time, posing with a cat. It goes without saying that when I was living there, I didn't have a cat, and I always wanted one as well. So life made things easy for me, and I started drawing without even thinking, combining the elements together. So I depicted myself. It's the first auto self-portrait I have made, in fact. I depicted myself with the scenes on the side that we can't see on the photography, but you'll probably see upstairs. Scenes of the city in Tokyo, and a battle going on in the background, and this cat that I have never met. So yeah, I hope you'll enjoy it when you see it.
Thank you so much, Bady, and thank you so much to the three of you for joining us today. Maybe some applause for our speakers. And we still have some more time for questions from members of the audience. We'll be passing a mic around, and please do raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question.
Is it on?
Yeah, it's
okay. Thank you to the speakers. That was really insightful, and it was wonderful to hear about art through the eyes of other through the eyes of other artists. I was wondering about identity and how it's presented in your works, and I wanted to ask about how the permanence of identity is talked about in your work, because a lot of the materials you use are somewhat impermanent. Things like matchboxes, which we would typically dispose of or may fall apart after use, but also talking about things like doors and windows that are never in a kind of permanent state because they're opening, closing, things are going through them. And so, I just wondered if you could talk about that.
Thank you for your question. I'll try to answer concisely. I think, yes, I mean, impermanence is something I think about often as everybody. I sometimes struggle with like body issues, medical issues, as everyone, I think. But this reflection started when I was doing the scrapbook. It's a collage book and a film that I made in 2015 after my visit to Hiroshima. And in there, I tried to convey the story of a Japanese schoolgirl, Sadako Sasaki, who has suffered from radiation after the bombing of Hiroshima. And I put in parallel her story with the stories of several persons that are close to me and mine as well. So putting in parallel the contemporary history of Japan and the one of the Near East, of Greater Syria, let's say. And this Japanese schoolgirl, Sadako, was told, we can say a legend, that if she folds 1,000 origami crane, she can make her wish come true. In this, there is a beautiful story that I think I would like to believe in. But there is something else that I understood later on, which was that the more you spend time on doing something, the more you're focusing on it. And the more you're focusing on it, you can make it happen. Some certain things are in the order of miracles, and of course will be quite difficult to make it true. But in case of this, we are talking about time, and time seems to be the greatest scale. And this is how sometimes I use material that is just time accepting. We are not going to change the course of time. So let's embrace it, I think. Did I answer your question?
Hello. Hi, I'm here. Okay. I just wanted to ask you one question. So, for the portrait with the cat, does the cat symbolize anything specific to you that is starting a new era of your whole art with the self-portrait and everything? This is just something I want to understand.
Thank you. It's a very good question. I was born the year of a tiger, but that's the only thing that comes to my mind.
There's something about that. Do we have another question from the audience? Yes, there's one.
I have a question. So, your practice. Should I stand up? Yeah, that's it. Your practice reminded me of other scholars whose travel is a big part of their creativity, and even a historic figure like Ibn Battuta. And how I was thinking about how I feel like your travel is so reflected in your work, but how do you think that affects your personal identity and your relationship with yourself also, because it kind of bleeds into your own personality?
Thank you. So how does it affect my identity somehow over time? Yes. Okay. Well, in every place, I mean, I think when the principle of conversation in different cultures are very different, and I tend to take it for granted that in fact we can all discuss in the same way. Sometimes add an idea to another idea in the same way wherever the culture is. In principle, it works, but what happens behind the scenes is different. So when, for instance, I migrated to Japan, I learned that I could not handle the conversation the same way as I used to be doing in Paris or even in Syria. And when I came to here in the UAE, as well, I could not continue with the same Japanese way sometimes of having a conversation with a person that has been living here for a long time. Of course, it can be understood, but it has a toll on the quality of conversation. So I think yes, every place enrich you in some way if you allow yourself to listen and read the room.
We had a question in the front. Oh.
It's not a question, but like when you were introducing your self-portrait with the cat that you don't have, beside you, a cat was walking outside. I thought it's just like beautiful. Yes.
So I think it's going to be last one and probably most unserious one. So what cat would you like to have if you decide to stay in one place for longer?
A cat that has short hair, because I'm allergic, in fact.
Does anyone want to add a question to this, or should we close on cats? Anyone, this is your last chance. Okay. So we'll conclude here. Thank you so much, Bady, again. Maybe another round. So I invite you all to go and see the exhibition. It's on the second floor. You can either take the stairs or the elevator. And just a little announcement before I set everyone free. We also have the exhibition of Asunción Molinos Gordo that is on the first floor, that is open for 1 week only. So if you haven't seen it, also please do take some time to see it, or see it again if you have, because it is closing very soon. And we'll give some additional opening remarks at 6, but it's going to be in Bady's exhibition on the second floor. But yes, in the meantime, of course, enjoy everything we have here. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you.